Hey, everybody. I have Denis O'Hare on the podcast today. Denis O'Hare has been nominated 3 times for Emmy Awards for his work in This Is Us and American Horror Story. Other TV appearances include The Nevers, Trying, True Blood, American Gods, The Good Wife, and Big Little Lies, and many more. Denis won the Tony Award for Richard Greenberg's Take Me Out, and an Obie Award for his performance in an Iliad, of which he is the co-writer along with Lisa Peterson. Some of his many other stage credits include Assassins, Sweet Charity, Cabaret, Inherit the Wind, Major Barbara, Into the Woods, 10 Unknowns, and Tartuffe in London. Some of his many film credits include Infinite Storm, Swallow, Late Night, The Goldfinch, The Normal Heart, Dallas Buyers Club, The Proposal, Duplicity, Milk, Charlie Wilson's War, Michael Clayton, A Mighty Heart, Half Nelson, Garden State, 21 Grams, The Anniversary Party, Private Life, and The Parting Glass, of which he is the screenwriter. When I sometimes truncate bios, sometimes I leave out people's favorite thing. So was there anything in all the things that I read and some that maybe I edited out just for time that you're like, wait, can you include blank because I love blank?
You know what? I don't, I mean, I have my favorite weird plays and things, but I've done so many plays. I did a play years ago at New York City Work Show called The Devils, which was, I think, 3 hours and 45 minutes long. And the critics hated it, and people used to walk out on it. And I loved it. It was 16 of us performing in a really small space at New York City Workshop. Liz Egloff play. It was Bill Camp and Lynn Cohen and Randy Danson and Kali Rocha and Boris MacGyver and Chris McCann, just like a crazy downtown theater crew. And I adored doing it. And so I don't include that in my bio usually because it's
well, because it's 3 hours and 45 minutes. But let me just to say, as I speak to you, Bill Camp and Beth Marvel live 2 floors above me. If they were home, I'd have them come into the booth with me. What a cast, what a play. We are here today for people who are just listening and won't get to see this episode. Behind me is a playbill for a new musical, but it is also known as the last musical, written by the great Stephen Sondheim, co-written with David Ives, directed by Joe Mantello, who directed Take Me Out, the play Denis won the Tony for, and someone you've worked with numerous times. It's at the Shed in New York City. I just would love to hit mute on my side of this Zoom call and just sort of from beginning to end, as much as you can share how this show came into your life, what the process has been like from day one until today, November 6th. Go. Whatever comes to mind.
It started in 1962 when I was, no, it actually, oddly enough, started with Ryan Murphy because, I've worked for Ryan for years, or American Horror Story, and Joe Mantello recently came into the Ryan Murphy universe. He did The Watchers, he did the recent Fugue, Truman Capote and the Girls, and we met. Joe and I worked, we met a long time ago. We worked on Horror Story in 2022. Called New York, and it was focused on the AIDS epidemic in New York. A great cast. Gideon Glick is in it. Russell Tovey, Zach Quinto, Charlie. I can't remember. Anyway, a great cast, and Sandra Bernhard and Joe Mantello. And so Joe and I were working as actors, which I haven't done with him in years. We did Normal Heart together, the movie Normal Heart. But I worked with him as a director and Take Me Out in Assassins, but as an actor very few times. So we worked together for a whole season. We were shooting in Fire Island. I was playing a guy with his hand chopped off, trying to get him to be my boyfriend, and having a humiliating scene in the surf on Fire Island, getting my clothes wet. And in one of the takes, we're turning around and walking back to number 1, and Joe goes, "Hey, would you ever be interested in doing a musical again?" And I went, "Yeah, sure, why not?" And he goes, "Okay, well, I got something to send you. It's actually Sondheim's last musical." And I was like, "Oh, okay." And he goes, "It's based on some Buñuel films." And I went, "Okay, I think I'm in." And he was like, "Well, do you want to read it first?" I said, "Sure." And so he sent me some materials and kind of a description of what it was. And based on just that, but mostly based on the idea of working with Joe, doing a musical again, doing Sondheim again, made me just say yes. And I didn't know what the part was. I didn't know if there was a part. I was playing man. I wasn't playing, an identifiable character. And and I read the script, and it was hard to read and confusing. And I was a little bit like, okay, whatever. I get a song, and that's about it. Well, whatever. I show up in the second act. And we talked a little bit about the character I played in the second act, who was a butler who kind of is revealed to be something else. And it was lacking, I thought, a lot. And not as a selfish actor, like, I want more parts, but just like, who is he? Where does he come from? What does he do? What does he want? Why is he here? Where's the payoff? And so Joe and I began a back and forth in an email about me just asking questions. And that turned into David Ives and Joe and I talking about that character and trajectory and making quite a few changes about what his life is and where he fits in. And then, at one point they sent me a demo of Alex Gimignani, who is the musical director and the great actor he is. He did Assassins with me, and his father, Paul Gimignani, was Sondheim's longtime conductor. So Alex recorded everything. And it wasn't just like, sitting at the piano and playing. He did multi-tracks. He did multi-voices. He did weird orchestrations. It was a phenomenal, production. And I got to have access to it. So I got to listen to the score, the Sondheim score, and of course, based on that and the song that I was given, I was like, hell yes, absolutely. And then we just kept in touch, and it slowly came together. And they've slowly announced who else was doing it. And I think Joe was a little skeptical that my yes back in September 22 would hold, because you know how actors are. Something else comes along, or you change your mind, or whatever. But I was like, no, this is a yes. This is going to continue to be a yes. Oddly enough, I was doing American Horror Story again, and there was a problem with scheduling, which freaked everybody out. But then the writer's strike happened, and then the actor strike happened, and so suddenly I was free. And the weird thing is I live far away. I live in Paris, and being away from my family is difficult. And I couldn't normally do a musical on Broadway because I can't do the commitment. I can't do 6 months. I can't do a year, certainly. But this wasn't that. This was a shorter commitment, and so it was kind of perfect. And because we're on strike, oddly enough, it's an amazing thing to have a job. All the actors, we all feel so lucky to be working in this crazy period, in a job that's not only a great job, a great, historical thing to be part of, but is a wage.
Right.
A lot of actors don't have wages. So that's my story.
Well, so much for the person who wrote in the question, tell me about the audition process, to which I responded to him, I don't think he will have an audition process, but I will definitely ask him about the process. Not that anyone is above auditioning, but I would think
all the time
at this point. Exactly. So, my timeline is a little warped right now. I feel like because of COVID, because of the strike, keeping track of dates and time. I remember Sondheim sort of hinting at this. I think it was on Colbert or some late night talk show. Were you ever in contact with him directly before he passed about this show or your part in it?
I was not. The last I saw him was, gosh, a while ago. I did Into the Woods and saw him then. And I saw him, oddly enough, on a bench in Rockefeller Center. I just come up from getting a wisdom tooth extracted, and he was sitting on a bench, and I was like, "Who's that? Who's that guy?" And I was like, "Oh, it's Sondheim, Stephen."
It's familiar, yeah.
And we just had a lovely chat, maybe like 20 minutes. We just sat there and just shut the breeze. Nobody stopped. Nobody recognized him. Nobody said anything. I was like, this is the greatest living composer in the world, possibly today, sitting on a bench at Rockefeller Center, and no one is saying anything. But that was, the last time I talked to him. And then Stephen Pasquale had been involved, I think, in 3 or 4 readings, of which I think they were in 2016 and then
Okay.
one in 2021. And Steve Pasquale actually just told us yesterday, we were chatting about Sondheim and about this thing, that I think it was about 5 days before Sondheim's death. I think he came and saw Assassins, and Steve was there, and they were chatting afterward, Pasquale and Sondheim, and they were talking about this. They were talking about this project. So that was 2021, right before his death. He was still talking about it. It was very much the thing that was on his mind. And they found Joe and Sam Pinkleton, our movement choreographer, and Alex, I think, and David Ives, or I could be wrong, who's there, went to Sondheim's house upstate, I think Connecticut, and saw on the piano music. And we're like, what's that? And it was something from Here We Are. It was actually an interlude that he had been working on and writing. So it was very much, something that was on his mind, that he was currently actively working on.
That's so beautiful. It's so
Yeah.
beautiful, and that they saw that and talk about feeling like, you know what, he'd be happy that the process was continuing.
And given what we've done, I think it's such a strange animal, and I think he'd be thrilled with what it feels like and looks like. And God knows what he would have done.
Mm-hmm.
There'd be more music in the second act. Who knows? From what I understand, he tried to write music for the second act and felt that the second act resisted music, because the nature of the film is based on Exterminating Angel. The rules of the world are upended, and one of the things that happens in the movie is the piano dies. There's a notable scene where a woman is playing a Mozart concerto, and she goes to play it, and the piano won't function.
Hmm.
There is no music.
Right.
And I think Sondheim actually, I think they talked about the fact that they came up against that weird idea that maybe there is no way to express musically what happens here. And in that way, it's a strange hybrid. It's got a lot of dialogue in Act 2. There is a misunderstanding that there's no music in Act 2. There is music in Act 2. There's a huge number at the top of Act 2.
Yeah.
Rachel Bay Jones, called Shine, and another number, a smaller number by Rachel. And I don't want to give the scene away, and then there's incidental music throughout. And I talked to the musicians, who are great, and they said they have a 12-minute pause, and that's it. They have 12 minutes where they're not working.
Right.
And
Right.
hang out and read a book or whatever, but otherwise they're on call because they're playing incidental music. There's a score and throughout the second act.
So can you talk a little bit about the process of building this really extraordinarily beautiful? I mean, anyone who's had the privilege of seeing a production that Joe's directed, his aesthetic, if you've had the privilege of being in his house, I mean, Joe's aesthetic is extraordinary. And the way he brings his imagination and aesthetic and his collaborators all sort of come together, whether it's Assassins or Take Me Out or Wicked, like the different things he's directed, it's you can always feel like his touch, even if the worlds are completely different, and this is no exception. And the thrill, when is this running until?
January 21st.
Okay, so many people will get to see it, but people listen to this all over the world. So I wouldn't really say there are spoiler alerts to talk about sort of some visual, beautiful and stunning moments in the show. But one of the things that's exciting about this play that has happened before in other plays, but not on a set that is as sparse and yet gorgeous and lush at the same time. It's inexplicable how both those things can live together, but it's a Joe Mantello show.
Tasha Katz, incredible lighting, and
it's beautiful. Like you want it to be your apartment. You are out there, like Iceman Cometh, right? When the actors are already at the bar and you get to walk in and just watch them behave. You, in one of the many parts you play, are out there at the beginning. You are on stage before the show has officially begun, working your your pecs over your arm muscles. It's a lot.
A
It's a
lot.
lot. I was like, oh my God, I get tired after washing one window. God bless Denis O'Hare. What are you hearing people in the audience, or can you hear audience members talking as they are waiting for the show to begin?
I don't, oddly
You
enough.
don't?
What I hear is the background of the general hum.
Mm-hmm.
Sort of force myself not to listen. I don't look. I never look at anybody directly in the face. I do look out at the audience as a whole, as if I'm looking out in a room
Yeah.
and anything. But I have managed to never actually look at anybody, and I don't listen to anybody. It helps that Tracy Bennett, who is my co-conspirator in all this, she plays a variety of servers and waids, and she's an amazing performer.
Fabulous.
Also out there cleaning, and she has a vacuum cleaner, so she turns the vacuum cleaner on, and that takes care of sound. You know what I mean? The vacuum
Okay.
cleaner.
Okay. Because in the audience, people are just freaking out. Like that's what you would hear. People would be freaking out. And I love whenever this kind of thing is happening, when people take a moment to understand, like, are those stagehands or those actors in the show? Like it's a slow awakening to sort of what's about to happen. Can you talk a little bit about David Ives, who I remember meeting when I first came to New York? Like he was one of the first writers I worked with, auditioned for. He's such a funny, interesting man. So obviously he's alive. He's in the room with you guys. Can you talk a little bit about, I'm not going to make you start at day one rehearsal, but it would be interesting to sort of hear about the very beginning of the process of actually putting this play together, and sort of what were the touchstones as a director? What did Joe ask of you guys in terms of, this is the world I want to create? How do we do this together?
You know, Joe is very collaborative, obviously, and Sam Pinkleton, who was the movement choreographer, and Billy, his assistant, they were, fully instrumental, as was Alex Gimignani, when it came to input and changes. We had textual changes up through almost opening night, and sometimes big ones. The monologues at the end of the play were added very, very late. I think they came in during previews. Those actors had to memorize those monologues. We had a whole huge scene of probably 7 pages that had to be memorized, worked on stage, and then it was cut. It was completely cut. There were constant, the logistics of keeping up with the text changes I failed. My script is a disaster. The thing that's sitting on my desk, even now at my dressing table, is a disaster. I can't read it. It is stuffed with so many versions, so many pages. And so we had to ask for clean copies. As an actor, usually you notate your script, and I gave up on that a long time ago, because it was just so many changes, or changes in the music constantly. Alex was not writing music, but he was taking pre-existing music that Sondheim wrote and changing where it went, for instance, because sometimes Sondheim himself would write like 9 or 10 or 15 versions of an interlude, and they're all not needed, or they're needed in different places, or that material can go here. And it was already evolving when he was doing it. So Alex, took all that pre-existing music and tried to fit where would it go. And so that was a huge process. Sam was working on the movement with the main 6 characters: Jeremy Shamus, Bobby Cannavale, Steve Pasquale, Rachel Bay Jones, Amber Gray, and Michaela Diamond, working with them to come up with organic, individualized movement that's not traditional choreography. It's discovered choreography. It's discovered movement that comes from real world. At one point, Jeremy, who I think is hilarious, bends down to tie a shoe, which he did in one of the, what we call the roads, when they're in between restaurants and trying to find the next restaurant. They have this strange kind of stylized movement that implies going someplace. And Jeremy bent down to tie his shoe. And then they changed his shoe to a loafer with no shoelaces. But the choreography stayed the same. So he continued to do it, but as he does it, he realizes that he has no shoelaces. So it becomes something else. So many parts of the show are like that, where you start from a real, literal impulse, and then it becomes tweaked, and it fits perfectly in with with the absurdity of what Buñuel's world is. Buñuel is, he was a true surrealist. He believed in, in being, I don't know, absurd. He believed in absurdity. And that's captured, I think, in so many parts of the show. But I found David Ives to be incredibly ego-free in many ways when it came to his textual changes and suggestions. He was very open to ideas and very open to changes, and would work in front of us about going, well, how about we try this? How about we try that? It was very, very fluid process. That being said, it was very difficult for us as actors to stay memorized. It's very difficult for us to, be anchored to anything. As an actor, you match your word to your movement. You match your movement to your emotions, and it all becomes a package. Well, when you change any one of those things, lines go out of your head, or you change the lines and suddenly you're like, where do I go? Or, I had many occasions where I had like a nice cross where I could do business. I open a door, I would fetch something, I would put a chair down, and then they would cut 7 lines. I'd be like, I have to get that chair. You want me to, I don't have any, well, can you do it faster? Yeah, but I had all this, like, okay. That stuff happened continually. It can happen, up to, and that's, it seems small, but it's not small. It's the architecture you're building. And see, every point, even something as simple as Rachel Bay Jones lost a monologue or a paragraph at one point when I had a big emotional thing coming up. I was using her paragraph as my springboard. What she said inspired me to speak. And suddenly it's cut. And I'm like, why do I speak? Why do I speak? Right. So that was, that was a constant process. That's any new work.
Right. But it's hard.
Yeah.
It is, you mentioned so many of the cast members. David Hyde Pierce shows up in this play as well. I mean, it's just, it goes on and on. It's an embarrassment of riches, this cast.
Yeah.
And everyone is just, and you think you sort of have a sense of an actress, like having seen Amber in Hadestown and then seeing her in this show, you're like, this person is, I mean, I'm not just talking because there's a wig. This is an unrecognizable person. If you know her in life, if you've seen her do other things, I mean, it is so many people going from Parade, Michaela, to this, Rachel from Dear Evan Hansen, Bobby, who we know in one lane, suddenly in a musical, but bringing his best Bobbiness to it. Everybody, it is incredibly deep. It's incredibly timely. It's incredibly political. It's incredibly funny, and it is incredibly Sondheim in all the way. There are musical moments, there are through lines, there are characters that are evocative and kind of throwbacks to characters of his that you love, rearranged and reassembled and brought into this very, very modern production. It sounds like it was exciting and really hard to put together for all sorts of reasons, especially, the first thing now when I get a script, I'm counting lines, hoping there are very few. Like as we get the last play I did before COVID was Richard Greenberg's play. It was called The Perplexed. And you just, of course, you have a thesaurus and a dictionary just trying to read it. And you cannot imagine how you'll ever learn it. And each time I do something like that, I'm like, well, that's the last time. So this sounds like a nightmare to me. And I watched it very jealously, but now I'm relieved because I would have had a heart attack. To that end, I imagine in a piece like this, with the number of funny people in your show doing very serious material, has there been a tremendous amount of fun now that you're open and the pressure of, we are bringing the last dead Sondheim and now there will be no more and it's on us to, do him proud? You did.
Very fun to do. The guy, one of the great things about it is that we're all in the same dressing room. There's only 2 dressing rooms. The Shed is one of those incredible architectural spaces where they forgot that actors need to use it. They do. What do you mean they need bathrooms? They can use the lobby. What do you mean? What do you mean they need a place to sit? Don't they have a dressing room? Right, but where do they eat? It's just like basic things, they forgot that they're human beings in the building.
Do you leave little comments where it says, please leave your comments here? You're like, we have a few. We have a few comments.
We have a book. We're going to publish a book and give it to them so they can sell it in their bookshop downstairs. It's an incredible space. And one of the reasons why I think Here We Are is so great there is because it is a weird world. Hudson Yards is weird. It's a made up space. The High Line is weird. It's a borrowed structure that's made into something else, designed by Danish people. It's a tourist haven. It's the west, the far west side. It's a tower. It's an office tower. And then you get up into the room. It's a gorgeous lobby and a gorgeous restaurant. And then you take these endless escalators up to these endless, massive hallways. Everything about it is surreal, so that you're in a weird way geared for this surreal world when you get in there. But the backstage life, because we have 7 guys in one room. I'm sorry, I've been around a long time. I've you get some perks, and one of the perks is you get your own dressing room when you're a certain level, and we're loving it. We are loving being crammed together. It's constant joking, it's constant banter. It is so much fun. The band is all crowded in the very, very small green room with us. So the band is there, the crew is there, the actors are there. We're all like trying to get by each other to use the one microwave. And it's actually wonderful. It really is. It makes for a really, really great world. Act 1 is super fun to do because it is a machine that runs in a certain way, and it's segmented. You have my number, and then you have Tracy's number, and then you have David's number. It's built on these, bung, bung, bung. Yeah, and Jin's number, Jin Ha's number is an amazing number with Michaela. And so everyone has their standalone moment in a way. And, I get nervous before my big number because it's an incredibly difficult number and I don't want to fall off, and I'm relieved when it's done and I get to go on to my other fun characters. But my backstage life is hectic because I have all these wig changes and costume changes, but it's a machine. You know what I mean? You get on, it's fun, you do it, a lot of laughs. Act 2 is a Chekhov, Ibsen, Strindberg play. It's difficult, it's ensemble, it's nuance, it's acting. You have to figure out what you're doing at every given moment. There's a lot of emotional stuff you have to try to hit. It's difficult for everybody. So it's Act 2 is not fun to do in many ways, but it's rewarding to do.
Well, it's incredible to behold as an audience member. It's really stirring. It's really a stirring experience. And I was so lucky to see it early where I had no idea what to expect other than the thrill of, oh my God, this cast, oh my God, this creative team, oh my God, it took 20 minutes, but now I'm in this really beautiful theater. Like, to your point about there's what I'll just say, it's really hard to get to and really worth it. I will say that is my experience. I kept thinking, wow, like this is very West to get to every night for work. Like there's just so many things I thought about. But I will say that everyone who works at the Shed may not have been concerned with backstage life for actors, but as an audience member, you feel greeted very warmly. And there's a tremendous excitement the minute one walks into this building about being one of the lucky ones who got a ticket for Here We Are. And I'm one of them.
Yeah.
Denis, I've known you a really long time, and every once in a while we bump into each other and we have like these beautiful little catch-ups, and they're always fragmented and rushed because we have children with us. But I just want to say I have been such a fan of yours, not just because the work you do is always so good, but like the integrity with which you lead, not just your work, but your person in the world. Seeing you married with a son, like to bump into you the other day with like a grown child, not even just the thrill of like Denis O'Hare and you got a baby, but like this beautiful young boy who is just, all the goodness of you and Hugo embodied in this person and his own person, and just the way in which you live your life and the things you choose to work on when you create your own work. I mean, folks, even just if you can get a copy of an Iliad, this piece that Denis wrote, even if you don't get to see it, you can buy it and read it. It's an incredible work. And The Parting Glass, this extraordinary film he made about his sister who committed suicide, and it is dealing with such a deep topic that touches every single human on the planet. No one, sadly, gets through life unscathed in this way in terms of being immune to this possibility. So on every level, the things you make, the things you do, the way you create an inclusive, beautiful rehearsal room for people, you know, Dominic, my husband, people know, like, loved working with you. Like, everybody loves working with you. You make it fun and you take it seriously at the same time. It's a great combination.
If you don't like working with me, I've taken care of their
They're done. We can't find them. They've
Well,
evaporated. Before I let you go, please come on again, because we haven't even scratched the surface of all of, like, your story and how you fell in love with the craft and all the other things you did and how you became part of the Ryan Murphy ensemble. What an incredible thing. Is there a little known fact about you that you can share before we say au revoir?
I was thinking about this, and I'm torn because I'm the one that I'm the most excited about is probably the most boring. And so, I will, let me think. Well, I'm obsessed with trees and birds. I hate the fact that I don't know the name of every tree I see.
Mm.
I spend a lot of time and energy looking at trees and trying to figure out what they are, and looking at tree books and downloading tree apps and leaf apps. And you know, I was during the confinement, I was in London and I took a course. This amazing guy who lived in Wales, is called the Woodland ID course. And I sat and watched, I don't know, 75 hours of tree identification courses with little musical intros and this incredibly lovely bearded man going, today we're going to talk about the black hawthorn. Now, the black hawthorn is not like the red hawthorn or the spiny hawthorn. And it was just like incredibly, and I've forgotten most of it. I lose all of it because I moved from country to country. I live in France, and guess what? Trees are different there.
Right, right.
Things, madly. I mean, even in England, what they call a flower is not what we call it here. They have different local names. We have a black-eyed Susan, they call it something else. We have an iris, they call it something else. And then in French, it's like, you know, and so the same with birds. But, you know, I try to teach my son, whenever we're going anywhere, I'll kind of go, what's that? What is that? And I want him to get maple, oak, willow, ash, birch, beech, just the big categories, you know what I mean? Because God knows, there's so many subcategories of these trees,
Right.
pine, spruce, because I don't know. They're, you know, if I have a God, it's a tree. I just think trees are remarkable things. They're remarkable beings. There is a clutch of aspens in, I think, Colorado or somewhere, that was for the longest time the largest organism on Earth and one of the oldest. It's 10,000 years old. And aspens are one organism. So usually every aspen tree you see is an offshoot. So underground, there's a massive root or a rhizome that produces trees in a row. So aspens are almost always in a row like that. And they're considered one organism. So you can have like 500 trees that are all connected underground as an organism, and that's an aspen tree. And it's things like that, just these crazy, crazy tree facts that the more you think about it, you're like, there are aliens and we live among them. They're
Right.
on Earth. They're having their own language, their own communication. They're doing things behind our backs. Thank God they're benevolent. They're not going to, you know, kill us because they deserve to kill us, but they're not going to. I love them. And so I spend a lot of time and energy not getting enough knowledge in my head, but trying on a daily basis to figure out what that thing is, you know. Anyways, that's my weird little known facts.
I know, but now everyone, including myself, listening to this is going to go out in their day with an awareness and a desire to take that in their day. And
Yeah.
what a gift you've just given us, like to be present with a tree as you are listening to this podcast, or after you listen and you go out in the world, go identify some trees in your orbit. Denis O'Hare, thank you. And I will see you soon.
You will. Thank you.
Mwah. Bye.